Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I'll be continuing on my dream casting series by talking about who I would have cast in a dream scenario where I can get anyone that I wanted for Big Brother All-Stars. Now, I will be doing this video in the context of this being BB22, and also we'll be comparing this cast to what I ended up selecting for my regular casting video for Big Brother All-Stars 2 back when I did it last year, which again, it's kind of funny looking back at how wrong I was on that list, even in comparison to the actual BB22. But let's do it. Let's talk about who is on my dream cast. And I decided to break some rules here a bit. Normally, I try to go with 16 people cast for Big Brother because that is how big most Big Brother casts are. However, I could not go down below 18. I mean, I really try. And I technically can. Like, I do know who I would cut, but it's like cutting those people would mean that we lose some interesting dynamics, and it's like I really don't want to cut these people. So I said screw it. Decided to go with an 18-person cast, which, mind you, I mean, like I've always said that I think Big Brother should have bigger casts instead of relying on buybacks to really extend the length of the season. I really think the cast should just be bigger. So just like my other casting videos, we'll be going through each season of the show and talking about who I would want to return from those seasons. So let's start off with BB1. I mean, come on. Now BB2, I mean, there were a few people I wanted to consider. I did obviously put one person back, and that person should be pretty obvious. But I did consider Nicole, and I considered Hardy. I mean, obviously the two players that did run that season from a strategic standpoint. However, really, there's just too much competition. This could be looked at as a Big Brother Legends cast. That's essentially what this cast ends up being here, because there are just so many big names of Big Brother that I would like to see play again, and that is why it was so tough to narrow it down to 18. Again, down the road, I'll probably do the same thing for Second Chance, Big Brother Second Chance, and on that list, I think there'll definitely be more room for maneuvering, but here, Nicole and Hardy just simply did not make the cut. I did consider Boogie, but there's some problems with that, and let's just get right into the person that did make the cast, and that's obviously Dr. Will. I mean, obviously seeing Dr. Will on Big Brother All-Stars 2 would have been great. It would have been awesome. It was never happening, but it would have been cool. And again, the reason why I considered Boogie is because, again, that's still an interesting dynamic. Again, like, as broken of a relationship that is now between Will and Boogie, based on things that happened between them in real life, I mean, it would have been cool to see, I guess. I mean, like, I think the biggest problem there is that there could be some actual hostility in terms of there could be some really nasty drama that stems with it. And like, because I just decided, let's just leave Boogie off. I don't need to see Boogie play again anyway. And Will is the bigger priority here for this list, so Will makes the cut. Now from BB3, there were a couple people I considered. I considered Roddy, but again, I think he's another one that's like probably more of a second chance candidate than for All-Stars here, where again, this is a jam-packed cast. I considered Lisa, and she was a bit closer to making it onto the list, but again, like, Lisa's someone that, to be honest, I don't feel like I need to see play again. I think the thing about Lisa is that she's always going to play a bit of a passive game, and in my ideal Survivor cast, it's like, while I wouldn't mind seeing Lisa play again, it's like, I don't need it. So I left her off, but the two people I put on, I mean, first up, we got Danielle Reyes, and obviously Danielle Reyes being on All-Stars would have been fantastic. Seeing her on BB22 would have been just great. It didn't happen, and it sucks because I feel like it would have happened if it was just any time but now. If COVID wasn't happening, I do feel like Danielle Reyes probably says yes, but it didn't happen. But again, for my dream cast, you gotta have Danielle Reyes, and then the other person's Jason Guy. And I will fully admit, I do think if you cut one guy from the cast, I think Jason is the one you cut. But I didn't want to lose Jason. I didn't want to lose having both Danielle and Jason back on Big Brother. That would have been incredible to see. Obviously, they do have a podcast now, so I mean, you could see them interact through that. But it's like seeing them play Big Brother again would have been just really surreal. Very similar to another pair that we'll be talking about a bit later. Now from BB4, again, a couple considerations, but not really too much of ones. People like G and Jack I would consider, but it's like, again, they feel like more second chance candidates. But the people that didn't make the cut, I mean, I did have June, the winner of BB4, and again, I think a great person to have back. I would love to see her back. I don't think it'll ever happen at this point, but it would have been really cool. I mean, I think she is one of the better players to play the game, and I think she could really solidify that if she were to return to play again. But yeah, at this point, it's not very likely. But the other person I put on would have been a really fascinating dynamic to see with June. I did also put Allison. And I mean, Allison did obviously return for first All-Stars and just completely flamed out there. But I think Allison's a great character. Allison is a pretty solid player. I think seeing her back now where she's like married with kids, I think it would be really interesting to see how she adapts to the game now. And also seeing her dynamic with June, who was there, and also her dynamic with a couple of the other people that she played the original All-Stars with, I think would have been really fun. So for me, I did put Allison on the cast. Now for BB5, I do have some considerations, but no one made the cut. I did consider Jace. I personally would love to see Jace play Big Brother again. I mean, his first time, he was a complete train wreck. Second time, I think he tried to play a lot better and was doing decently for first few weeks. And then his game kind of blew up at the end there. And then he was in consideration for BB Can 4, and I think it would have been really interesting to see him play again, considering he seems like the same person now. But again, considering how many years has passed, I would like to see how he adapts his strategy. But again, probably not going to happen. And there was really no room for him on the cast. I considered Marvin, but Marvin's another one of these that like probably feels more like a second chance candidate than an all-star candidate in terms of this cast. I considered Karen, actually, from BB5, as I do think she's probably one of the better players from that season. A very underrated player, but again, someone that I don't need to see on TV again. And I did consider Diane, who was a bit closer to making the cut. For me, I went with Allison over Diane. I would like to see Diane back too, but it's like, I do think the dynamic between June and Allison would be more interesting to me than just seeing Diane by herself on return. So did cut Diane, but I would still like to see it. From BB6, I have one person that I consider that did not make the cut, and that is James Ryan. And again, it's largely just due to the fact that there were not enough spots. I believe James was actually my number 10. Like, if I did expand this to 20 people, I do think James would have made the cut. But again, narrowing it down to 18, again, try to get to 16, just really couldn't do it without losing some dynamics that I really wanted. I did decide to cut James through that. And then the two people that I did put on from BB6, I mean, there are two people that are on the actual All-Stars season that I was very happy to see back, and that is Kaser and Janelle. Now, I will be completely honest here. I did consider cutting Janelle. Like, if I were to cut one woman from this All-Star cast, it would be Janelle. Like, I do think Janelle is the person that we've obviously seen the most. To be honest, I don't feel like we needed to see her again in terms of her gameplay style. Obviously, like in terms of her legacy, we need to see her again. I think she's definitely one of the bigger names on the actual BB22 cast. I didn't really need Janelle, but if I'm having Kaser on there, who is someone that I personally love, Kaser's one of my favorite players from when I was a kid. Kaser and Janelle, I think that's a great dynamic to have on the All-Star season. Again, if I were to cut two people from this cast, it would have been Jason, it would have been Janelle. But it's like, to lose their connections with Daniel Reyes and lose that connection with Kaser, it's like, that's not something I really wanted to do. So I did decide to leave it at 18, though realistically, if I really wanted to, I could narrow it down to 16, but I just don't want to. Now let's move on to BB8, where there were some considerations. I did consider Evil Dick, largely just due to the fact that, I mean, he is Evil Dick. I mean, while he is a really annoying presence online and someone that I think just fundamentally doesn't understand the game, I do think he would have brought an interesting dynamic to a return, but again, really didn't make the cut. And I also considered Jen Johnson, but again, more of a second chance candidate there. But I did put two people from BB8 on the cast. First up is someone that was on the cast, and that's Danny Donato, or Danny Briones, whatever you want to call her. I think she was someone that was pretty necessary for this cast. And kind of like Janelle, where I think really to bolster the reputation of the BB22 cast as a whole, I think you had to have Danielle in there. I mean, she was a pretty big name, and I was pretty excited to see her back. So for my Dream All-Star cast, she does make the cut there. And the other person, someone that I am still pretty disappointed that wasn't on the actual cast, and that is Eric Stein. Eric Stein is one of the most screwed over players in the history of Big Brother. He wasn't allowed to play his own game, but even when he wasn't allowed to play his own game, he ran that season. And if it wasn't for America actively telling him to ruin his game, I do think he wins that season. I do think he's one of the best players to ever play the game, despite never actually being able to play the game. And I do think seeing him actually be able to play the game on an All-Star season would have been so great to watch, but it didn't happen. But again, on a Dreamcast here, he has to make the cut. Now from BB9, I didn't put anyone on the cast, but I did actually have a decent amount of considerations. I considered Alex, I considered Matt, I considered James, I considered Natalie, I considered Sheila. All those people were in brief consideration, though really they're more in line with a second chance cast than they are with an all-star cast here. And the other person was Adam. I really considered Adam. Because the thing is, like, I think Adam is a bit of an underrated winner. I mean, he's not like a mastermind by any means. Like, he does have a lot of faults in his game. But I do think he also has a lot of pros that people seem to ignore. I think his endgame stretch, like his Final 5 on, is a pretty masterful display of Big Brother gameplay. And also, he's someone that's completely changed since he last played. When he last played, he was a massive drug addict and got arrested immediately after season 4 running a drug ring using his money that he won from Big Brother. And it's like, since then he's gotten out of jail, he's completely changed the type of person that he is from what I understand. It's like, I would be fascinated to see how he plays Big Brother now, but it's like, obviously it was never going to happen. And really, again, like, there's bigger names I would like to see back than him, but it's like, he was definitely in consideration. Now from BB10, and a lot of considerations for BB10 too. I mean, we got Brian Hart would have been great. Jesse Goddard's, I personally would have actually liked to see back. Again, didn't make the Dreamcast, but definitely in consideration. Consider Libra, Michelle, Rennie, all those would have been great. Obviously, on the actual season itself, we did get Memphis and Keisha, and it's like, they wouldn't have made my Dreamcast, but again, was happy to see them back on the actual cast. But again, the person that makes the Dreamcast, I mean, you got to have Dan Giesling. I mean, probably the biggest dream get on here. I mean, like, I don't see any way that Dan wouldn't make my Dreamcast. That one was pretty clear. Now from BB11, got a few considerations. We got some fun characters like Ronnie and Russell, which again, probably more in line with a second chance cast. Probably same thing with Michelle. And then we got Kevin, who is on the actual cast. And I was very happy he was on the actual cast. But again, with the competition that there is here for spots on the cast, Kevin didn't make the cut. But again, very happy he was on the actual cast. Now from BB12, again, a lot of considerations here. Really considered Matt Hoffman. Really would have liked to see him back, but didn't make the cut here. Considered Brendan. Didn't make the cut. Enzo, someone that's actually on the cast, obviously. And really, I mean, the rest of the brigade was also in consideration. Lane, Hayden. Again, really tough to fill out those slots. I did put 2 women from BB12 on the cast. Probably 2 of the most memorable figures from the cast. We got Rachel Riley, who, I mean, again, would have been on the cast if she wasn't pregnant. I mean, I think that's very clear. I mean, it's been even talked about how she wanted to do it pregnant, which I believe I even said in my cast speculation video. But again, no way production was going to allow that to happen. But again, if she wasn't pregnant, she would have been on. I think it would have been great to see her on. I think it would be a lot of fun. And then also we got Brittany. I think Brittany is someone that I would love to see play again, especially because I think she actually played a pretty strong game in BB14. And I do think on her return, she would be able to play an even better game. So I would really, really like to see a Brittany return at some point. From BB13, had some considerations, but no one made the cut. Again, it was a lot of more second chance candidates, people like a Dominic, a Shelly, Kalia, but not really people that were going to make my actual all-star cast. BB14, I mean, I kind of considered Frank, not really though. I mean, the thing with Frank is that he was my favorite player back in BB14. I loved Frank at the time. Then BB18 happened, that wasn't great, and now I feel like he's a bit problematic. It's like, I don't need to put Frank on the cast. And I considered Ian. Obviously, Ian is on the actual BB22, but it's like, really though, do I need him back when we have so many other bigger names? Not really. So I decided to cut him as well. Now from BB15, where I actually had some considerations. Again, people that would probably end up making my second chance cast, considered Helen, Amanda, Judd would have been fun. McCrae I considered, didn't really make the cast. Because again, just so much competition here, but I did put on Andy. I mean, I think Andy, again, most underrated player in the history of Big Brother. I think Andy played one of the best games ever. I think he is one of the best players to ever play the game. And I think on the return, I think it would be fascinating to see how he does. I think the fact that he wasn't called for All-Stars is a travesty. And again, you knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's very clear production didn't like him. But I would have loved to see him back. He made my cut here. Now from BB16, again, got a lot of considerations. I mean, Devon would have been incredible, but again, more of a second chance candidate. Zach would have been great if he didn't ruin his relationship with production. Donnie is someone that I was surprised wasn't actually on BB22, but again, didn't really make the cut here. Nicole Franzel, I mean, I don't mind Nicole Franzel as much as many other people, but again, when we have so many other stronger women, I don't feel like she makes the cut. Frankie would have been interesting, didn't make it on. Cody's out, obviously on the actual cast, but he didn't make the cut. But I mean, I gotta have Derek. I mean, again, having a cop on reality TV right now, I don't know if that's the greatest decision in the world, but I mean, Derek is obviously a legend of the game. I mean, he's someone that I would love to see play a second time. And again, if this is a true big all-star season, you gotta have Will, Dan, Derek, and have them battle it out. It would have been fantastic. So obviously, gotta have Derek on the cast. Now from BB17, I put 2 women from this cast on the cast, but had some other considerations. I considered Audrey. I think Audrey is someone that is always going to play hard and flame out, and I think that would have been fun. But again, for this massive all-star season, I don't think she made the cut. Considered Shelly, again, probably more of a second chance candidate. Austin, probably same thing. Johnny Mack, I'm still disappointed he's not on BB22. But again, for this dream cast, there's just too many spots. The 2 women I did put on, I believe these are the last 2 women on the cast. We do have, obviously we have Vanessa. I mean, I don't think you can do a dream all-star cast without Vanessa. I mean, seeing Vanessa play again would be just so fascinating, considering how lopsided her game is, where like her game is almost all strategic. It's like she really gets through most of her game solely based off of her strategic mind for the game and how she's able to execute through that. It's like her social bonds are pretty weak. But I do think on return, I think that would be a true test of how good of a player is she, because right now I do have a lot of like hesitancy with how good of a player Vanessa really is, because I just don't know how repeatable it is. But again, Vanessa on the return would be really fun. The other person was Devon. I mean, Devon's like someone I've had a kind of a tough relationship with, where like I remember watching her original season, I just thought she was a bad player despite having some good reads, but she was such a fantastic character. And like when she did come back for BB18, I was kind of like, okay, I guess. But now on BB18, I think she was also just a really great character. Again, kind of player, but someone that had a lot of potential. And I do think now, as time has gone on, I do think my opinions on Devon as a whole, especially coming into BB22, definitely did go up a good chunk to where Devon would make my dream cast. Amazing. I think she's someone that is a legendary figure of the show at this point. She's someone that has a lot of potential as a player, but was never able to really recognize it, and is also a really fun character. So why not put her on? Now for BB18, where I had some considerations, I considered Paulie Califori. Again, Paulie would just be a train wreck, and that's why I would have considered him. But again, for an all-star cast, he didn't make it. I considered Victor. I think Victor is someone that has potential, but again, all-star cast didn't really make the cut. But I did put on Paul. Again, Paul's another one of the bigger figures in the history of the show at this point. Definitely one of the biggest modern figures of the show. I think if you're having a true all-star season, I think you gotta have Paul. Don't see it any other way. BB19, I really only considered 2 people. I considered Jessica Graff, but even then, that wasn't really too deep of a consideration. But then I also considered Josh, and he didn't make it on either. But the thing about Josh is that, again, like, he was relatively close. Like, I think Josh is such a fantastic character, and the fact that he is also a winner, I think makes him someone that I would really like to see back at some point. But again, didn't make it on here. And then we move on to BB20, where we have the final person that ended up making the cast. But again, few considerations. I did consider Caitlin Herman, as I do feel like she's a great character. Again, terrible player, but fantastic character. But again, didn't make the cut. Considered Rachel Swindler, but again, probably more of a second chance candidate. And same thing goes with like a Haley and a Brett. But I think for an all-star season, you gotta have Tyler. I mean, he's the last person on the cast here. I think Tyler's such a massive figure for a show up to BB22. Again, like in BB20, he played one of the best games ever, dominated the airtime that season, really was the star of the show that season. I think you gotta have Tyler back. That was really a no-brainer. Now for BB21, I mean, there were some people I considered, but really just no one made the cut there. Again, the cast is already full. I considered some people, like Nicole Anthony I considered, but again, there's just other people I would rather see back. I wouldn't mind a Cliff return, or a Tommy return, an Obi return, even a Kemi return, Kat return, even a Christy. I mean, like, there are people from BB21 that I wouldn't be mad to see back again, but at the end of the day, this was just such a stacked field. They didn't make the cut. So there we go. That is my dream cast for Big Brother All-Stars. From BB2, we have Will Kirby. From BB3, we have Danielle Reyes and Jason Guy. From BB4, we have June Song and Allison Irwin. From BB6, we have Casarita and Janelle Pierzina. From BB8, we have Eric Stein and Danny Briones. From BB10, we have Dan Giesling. From BB12, we have Brittany Haynes and Rachel Riley. From BB15, we have Andy Heron. BB16, we have Derek Lavasser. BB17, we have Vanessa Russo and Devon Rogers. BB18, we have Paul Abrahamian. And BB20, we have Tyler Crispin. So that is my dream cast. I guess now we can compare it to my original casting video, which again was so wrong. I can't believe how wrong I got it too, and because like I was pretty confident on a lot of these picks actually at the time. On my original casting video, the only people that did make the BB22 cast that was in my original casting video, based like my original predictions on who would be on an all-star cast, I got Devon right, I got Ian right, I got Janelle right, I kind of got Josh right. I mean, Josh was going to be on the season, so I mean, you can count that as a right one, right? And I got Tyler right. I mean, that's it. Literally 5 people. Mind you, there were other circumstances. I didn't expect Paul to turn it down. I didn't expect Rachel to be pregnant. I didn't expect them to pick Bailey over Swaggy. I mean, there were a couple surprises for me overall. Like, I was also just surprised that they didn't pick as many BB20 people. Again, on my original cast, I had 5 BB20 people. And instead, we only got 2, with Bailey being a person that wasn't really on my radar for a return. Yeah, I was expecting Brett, Haley, Caitlin, Swaggy. Like, we didn't get any of those people. Instead, we got Tyler and Bailey, which, again, Tyler was a lock, but I was not expecting Bailey. I'm pleasantly surprised that we didn't get people like a Liz Nolan or an Alex Au. I'm still disappointed that we didn't get people like a Johnny Mack or a Donnie, but again, what are you going to do? But again, comparing that cast, though, to my dream cast, I mean, it's like night and day, obviously. My dream cast is a dream cast. Like, it is essentially a cast of legends of Big Brother. I mean, just looking at this field, it is so strong. Really, only a few people carried over. With those people being what? Devon, Janelle, Tyler, Rachel, and Paul. Everyone else is radically different. And that is just due to the fact that I feel like there were just a lot of people that I would like to see come back from Big Brother that I just don't see coming back from Big Brother. Again, when we're looking at this dream cast, I mean, there's a good chunk of people here that I just feel like production has no interest in bringing back. People like Andy Heron, Eric, Allison, even a Jason Guy, even a June. Like, I just don't think they're really high priorities for CBS to bring back. And then I feel like there's a lot of people that would just say no. Again, obviously Dan and Derek said no. Will said no. Paul said no. Vanessa's pregnant. Rachel was pregnant. And Daniel Reyes, Brittany Haynes said no. So, I mean, there's just so many other factors here that caused these casts to be so radically different. Again, we're never going to get this dream cast, but if we ever did, I mean, it would truly be incredible. But there you go. I mean, that is my dream cast for Big Brother All-Stars. We'll obviously be continuing this dream casting series in the future. Plus, also, obviously, do more videos related to BB22 down the road. But for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.